Aliens with the power of telepathic hypnotic suggestion set out to destroy Moonbase Alpha in a special 2-hour episode of Space 1999, Wednesday night at 8 on 11 Alive.
Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Pod Stallions. I am Brian and with me as always is Jason.
Hello everyone.
And with us again is David Weiner, who somehow had his schedule free. And actually I should have probably described who you were, David. You are our resident third chair. You are the returning champ. You are the director of In Search of Darkness and the upcoming In Search of Tomorrow. Thank you very much. These are the In Search of Darkness was a wonderful documentary about 80s horror, and In Search of Tomorrow is about 80s science fiction.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And happy to be here. Happy to be the third chair whenever you'll have me.
Yes.
And yes, I had a little extra time currently. I don't know why.
We've all had a little extra time, and I hope everyone is doing okay. I noticed in the Pod Stallions group that a lot of folks are joining together and sharing, and it's wonderful. And that is the positive aspect of this, is to just keep calm, have fun, and take care of your families. And I think we're all doing that. And we've actually been talking for over 40 minutes about this before we decided to tape the show. And
that's right. We had a little therapy session ahead of time, so
yes,
there you go.
Yeah, and we should probably release that. I don't know. But
we thought with everything going on that everybody's finding new ways to deliver their message or to deliver the news or do their talk shows or whatever. And here's this thing that we do virtually anyway, that we should dip into this now and then. We have the time and maybe provide a little bit of entertainment for the people that dig this stuff and get your mind off of the madness for a little while and talk about fun stuff.
And actually, Jason, you should say what we chose not to do because it was it hit a little too close to home.
Well, it's not like I think it was it's sort of a double whammy. One was David had sent a note and said, let's start with, Omega Man and kind of go from there with all the apocalyptic stuff. And I think first of all, I think that Brian and I did an episode like that way back.
Nobody remembers it, but yeah.
Nobody remembers it. But we also thought, that would be super cool. And
yeah, I love the Omega Man, but
yeah, we could go on. I could think of all kinds of really obscure stuff that are, apocryphal and, the idea. But we thought, those are, cautionary tales. And now we're living it. Now it's something that's actually happening. And maybe the best thing would be to, talk about the Muppets or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this particular topic, I forget who threw it out.
I did.
But it's just, well, there you go.
That's because I think the last time we spoke with David, I thought we kind of kicked it back and forth after Saturn III, and I thought, I'd really love to have David back for a Space 1999 retrospective. And then, opportunity has shown itself, and I thought, well, let's do it now because I don't have to study for this one. And I don't think David's actually had the most. I think it was in the Saturn III we actually talked about. You had probably one of the last great interviews with Martin Landau.
Yeah.
And,
go ahead. Yeah,
no.
I was going to say, call it the last great interview. I can't disagree because I sat down with him for 4 hours.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah, no, and I know Jason knows enough on the subject, and you've boned up, sir. You've boned like you've never boned before. You watched 6 episodes.
And let me tell you, being alone, that really means something these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have. I've dug into quite a bit of it. I've seen the entire series.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of it's so long ago that it all kind of blends together sometimes. I know this is one of Brian's favorite things of all time, so that would be an easy way to.
The Space 1999 is the reason I'm doing this right now. It was the thing that got me into collecting. It's the thing that got me, because, and I'll just, sorry to bogart this, but everything in my childhood, I felt like I was entering a party as the party was, like they were stacking the chairs. You know, I was born in like the last couple of months of 1970. So like Planet of the Apes, it was over by the time I was 5. Space 1999 was canceled when I was 6. And everything just felt like Star Trek was over before I was born. And everything always felt like I had this sort of like, crap, I missed that. Oh. So I became a very retrospective kid at a young age. And I began collecting Space 1999 stuff when I was about 14. I think that's when I really started getting interested in it again. It was about the 9th grade. And it's the reason that Plaid Stallions exists.
That's great.
It's the reason I ever went on the Mego Museum, because one of the first things I ever traded for through the back of Starlog to a company called the Back Issues was a Captain Xantor action figure that turned out to be a Mego action figure. It was a British figure. We didn't get them in Canada, North America, and that blew my mind, and I became obsessed with getting all the information. And yeah, so this show, although it is no longer my favorite Gerry Anderson television program, it is my second favorite, and it is something that I absolutely adore. And the first thing I see every morning as I walk to the office, that is the Plaid Stallions office, is a poster. It's Martin Lando's face. I have the Destination Moonbase Alpha poster on my basement steps as I walk down.
That's such great artwork.
It's beautiful.
I recently did a puzzle of that.
You have a puzzle of that?
I have a Space 1999 puzzle that uses the art that's in Destination.
I have never
Alpha.
seen that one.
They're sort of on the moon outside with a big explosion and like an eagle on the top. Is that the same art we're talking about? He's with Barbara Bain.
That's actually the Charlton Comics first issue. That's Breakaway.
Oh, okay. Is that?
Yeah, Destination Moonbase Alpha, what it is after Star Wars came out, Lou Grade got the bright idea of taking Space 99 episodes and releasing them theatrically in Europe and stuff. And it actually did get a theatrical release.
Oh, it's a little different. Okay, I'm thinking
it's a second season episode.
Got Maya.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. See, I've already flubbed. Should we create a little
I was going to say, why don't we
context?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I was going to say, why don't we start with each of us, what our first, if we can think back to childhood, like what our first awareness was of this show. Was it pre-Star Trek? Was it after Star Trek? Same time? David, you're the guest, so why don't we start with you? When did you first become aware of this show as a kid?
When it was first run. I was born in 1968. It came out in 1975, so I was 7 years old, and I was already an avid Star Trek watcher, watching repeats on my local television station in New York growing up. And this popped on, and I don't remember how I came to know that it was coming. I just knew, because back then, you scoured the TV guide to see the listings. I probably saw some sort of ad for it, but I remember watching Breakaway, I've seen every single episode first run as they rolled out, and it was amazing. And being a Star Trek fan, I just love sci-fi, and I felt like it was a very different show, and I felt like it really, like you, Brian, I felt like it belonged to me because I was seeing these first run and I knew they weren't repeats.
Yeah.
But I was so into it that I got all the toys. I had that amazing massive Eagle playset, which we'll come to. The giant Eagle One playset. That was one of the great toys I've had in my life. But I even had one of the comm locks that was supposed to be a walkie-talkie, but I got it secondhand from someone. And I used to walk around my house from room to room, stopping, pressing the comm lock, pretending the doors would open, and then going through, and then finding a travel tube. But yeah, I was really into it. The music just blew me away. I got so galvanized and excited whenever that opening theme would come. But I have to say, I think what even as a kid, and I'll throw it back to the group, is that I think it was an episodic show, but it was, I believed they shot it on the moon. The effects were so realistic, and so born out of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was convinced that they shot it on the moon. I just knew they did. But I also kind of felt like, well, each story was really sort of a little more intellectual with some action, at least in the first season. When they got to Dragon's Domain, which pretty much told an entirely different story, where Koenig was kind of like a tangential character in this retelling of a guy who was on a mission that had gone awry with this giant tentacled creature. I realized that you could approach these stories from all sorts of different angles. And clearly I have a lot to talk about, so I'll stop here.
Well, that's interesting because you because of your age and when you saw these things. I mean, I think this falls into this fuzzy sort of category, like this netherworld of like what age. Not only were we seeing these things, or that I was seeing these things, or whether I understood that they were repeats, that it was not something I was seeing that was a current show kind of thing. I don't know when your brain starts to figure that out, but I mean, I think I knew when I was 6 or 7 that Star Trek was a show that existed before, and that I was seeing these repeats, and that they're on a different time. It wasn't like a first run series. Mm-hmm. 1999 was it had to be around the same time, like 76, 77, 78 or something, where they would run it on the weekends, I think, like, on the local station, syndicated. And there I have this recall of seeing it late at night, too, on like a Friday night or something, like like rotate with The Prisoner, when they'd have The Prisoner on late on a Friday night or something. I could be wrong about that. But I also knew what it was because the kid down the street, who was a rich kid, he had the Eagle transporter thing, the ship and the toy, and I was just like, what is this? But I know that it was also pre. No, I take it back. Maybe that couldn't have been. I don't think that was pre. I don't think I saw that toy that he had pre Star Wars. I don't think so.
Well, that toy was stopped production in at the end of 76, right? Or
77.
I don't know. I think he and I became friends after Star Wars. So, and I knew he had the ship, but I wouldn't have seen it until after Star Wars, when I went to his house one time and saw it, and I was like, oh, that's the ship from that show or whatever.
But toys used to hang around on store shelves for a long time too.
Yeah, maybe it was on the shelves. I don't really. I know I wanted it really bad. Yeah. I don't remember seeing many of the figures, but I remember the rack toys, and I remember the gun, and we'll get to this because you guys are gonna talk about it in much more meaty terms. I'm going to talk about it, as far as visuals and what has struck me, watching more of it and stuff. But I'll say now, and I'll say it a bunch of times during this, the stun gun, the gun that's in that show, is one of the coolest designs of any sci-fi show ever. And I think I had the disc shooting one. I either had it off the card or I had it with like a utility belt kind of thing. That would have been a toy that would have hung on the shelves longer or something.
Remco utility belt, yeah.
I was obsessed with that gun. I thought it was so friggin' cool.
That's a great segue to my. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to interject real quick. One of them, I think it was the dish shooter, had, or there was a water gun version too, but it had like a little silver nodule in the front to shoot. Do you guys recall which one that was?
That would be the dish shooter, yeah.
Okay. I still, to this day, have a scar on my thumb from trying to yank that thing off because it wasn't screen accurate. And I finally ripped it off, and it created such a gash on my thumb.
What?
But I never got stitches because I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to tell my parents how I got it. So I literally have a reminder to this day of the Space 1999 gun that wasn't screen
Damn you,
accurate.
Remco.
Wow.
See, that's where I was going to go. I have no memory of how I was aware of it, but I can honestly remember my dad doing something with a staple gun. The minute he put that friggin' thing down, I was like, because I knew exactly the Space 1999 gun. And I found tons of childhood drawings that are terrible Daleks in terrible eagles.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I really was quite a hack. But like, I honestly felt like I had a Professor Bergman doll as a kid because that's the one every boy wanted, and I honestly think that I remember the show, but it was so hazy and fuzzy. The thing I remember most was that in Canada, the French channels would carry stuff a lot longer. And they would get stuff that you've never seen before, like they played Captain Harlock. It was called Al Bader. And even though I still struggle with French, even though I'm married to a French person, I would watch Cosmos 1999 because it aired for like until about 1980. And the TV movies, the Destination Moonbase Alpha, I remember that aired once when I was 8, and I was obsessed with that. And then I would make my dad was a night owl, and to get the TV on a Friday night, like at 1 a.m, you'd have to like negotiate with him, and he let me watch like Journey Through the Black Sun, which was the repackaging of Space 1999 episodes, and those blew my mind. They really did. And the thing, I think the real linchpin was in the 6th grade, so this is about 1981 for me. I was in like a frenemy situation with 2 guys. Like, it was a really strange thing, and we all chose to be like Secret Santas to each other. And I think I just bought each of those guys a Star Wars figure. And one of those guys bought me, and I don't know where he found it in 1981, but he bought me the Space 1999 color form set. And,
oh, wow.
And he
nice.
turned to the other kid, because the other kid was my friend, and he's telling me what the other guy was saying. It was not a fun period of my life. But I was elated to get this. I remember like, oh my God, thank you. And the other kid said, yeah, he didn't think he would get that reaction out of you. He thought that was the worst gift he could give you.
Oh, he tried to burn.
Yeah, but it was like a complete backfire because I played with that for like weeks. I was so amazed that he got me that, because I had been watching this, Space 1999 in French.
It's interesting. I had the action figures, which had limited articulation.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Commander Koenig action figure, and I had the Moonbase Alpha playset, the vinyl playset.
There's nothing that is an amazing. Like, I do not like the dolls because they use those Sunshine Family bodies, but that playset is killer.
I have a very distinct memory of I had it and I played with it and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then one holiday, I had to have been in 76-ish or so, maybe even 77. My mom's work had a holiday party, and they gave all the kids gifts. And I remember I opened it up expecting, I don't know, maybe I expected a Star Wars gift, even though I knew there was nothing out there because Christmas '77, there wasn't much. But I remember I opened this up, and there was yet another Moonbase Alpha and action figures. And I remember acting all surprised and happy, thinking, "Oh my God, now I've got 2 of these things." And but I remember immediately thinking I could double up the Moonbase Alphas so I can sort of have this extended play set. So there you go. There's that very distinct memory.
So you got the Moonbase Alpha gift set, if there were figures included.
Maybe. I seem to recall they just bought some figures so it wasn't be an empty thing.
Oh.
Like there were the packaging was there as well.
Oh, okay.
But going back to my interview with Martin Landau, one of the joys of that experience was talking to him about the merchandising and the action figures, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the action figure, weren't they great?" And he did this this motion as if he was his own action figure, where it was this actual limited articulation, where he couldn't move his arms. He knew that it had limited articulation. He's like, "Oh yeah, my granddaughter plays with me now." But I had a couple extras, but who swiped me? I don't even know where they went, but they're gone now.
Well, let's go backwards a bit because Brian, you both know it, but I know, Brian, this is one of your great loves, but this was you
want to talk about the genesis of the series because it's fascinating.
Gerry Anderson did all the Super Marionation. He had all those shows.
Yeah.
Secret was it Secret Society, Secret Service?
Yeah.
Secret Service. That would have been the first one that had like live action stuff in it, correct? Is that correct? Before UFO? Because there's live action.
Well, UFO was the first full live action.
Right, but
Secret Service had that weird disjointed. He always used that nightmare hand scenario that I find disjointing.
Yeah. No, I'm saying when you watch Secret Service, Stanley Unwin is on camera.
Yeah.
He has scenes where he's on camera. So that would have been the first time they went from puppets to live action.
Yeah.
Then it would have been UFO was the first full live action series, and then 1999 was after.
Well, actually,
UFO.
To be fair, the first thing that happened was something called Doppelganger, or Journey to the Far Side of the Sun.
So the movie.
The movie. And that actually had a couple of cast members of UFO in it. Then they went into UFO. UFO was filmed over 69-70.
Yeah.
And the Space 1999 comes from UFO. It is a direct descendant because in 73, CBS started playing UFO on network television. And that is why there was a lunchbox and a Halloween costume and all these bits of merchandise for UFO.
Okay.
ITC in the New York office said UFO is getting high ratings, and this ITC in the New York office was the worst thing to listen to, but it did give the genesis for the show. We need a second season of UFO, but it can't be on it can only be on the moon. The moon-based episodes are the ones that sell. We don't want any Earth-based episodes. So Gerry Anderson began work on UFO 2. He built this moon base. He was designing this stuff. And then ITC New York said, no, we don't want it at all. The ratings have tanked. And this is a story that actually permeates through Space 1999 as well. So Gerry Anderson went to Lou Grade and said, well, we've done all this great work. Why don't we create a new series?
Okay.
So they started, and I think the big famous thing was Anderson wanted Robert Culp as Commander Koenig.
Yeah, actually, it was Sylvia. Sylvia wanted
Sylvia,
Robert
yeah.
Culp.
Well,
and they also needed, if I could just interject real quick, they wanted an American to lead the show.
Yeah.
Even though they were going to be shooting it in the UK.
But it was based on Star Trek's popularity at the time in syndication.
They wanted an American so they could sell it in American territories. Yeah. So in order to distribute it in the U.S., it had to have an American lead.
And wasn't that? But I mean, there was some tradition where that's concerned with the Anderson stuff, where they would have British actors doing American accents. Wasn't there a thought with the the Super Mario Nation stuff was that it would get to bit more markets if they had used American accents with all the characters, the Tracy Boys and all that stuff. So there was a bit of a tradition there, wasn't there, where they had American leads, kind of, or they had Brits doing American accents.
Well, I mean, Captain Scarlet had a British accent. The Thunderbirds definitely were supposed to be Americans. You had your favorite actor in the world, Jason Shane Rimmer.
Fuck yeah.
Being one of them, and yeah, I think you're right. I think it has a lot to do with. Have you ever seen the Grindhouse trailer for the movie Don't?
Yeah.
Nobody speaks in that because they wanted. It's supposed to be a British movie, but the trailer has no one speaking, so that the American audiences don't know it's a British movie. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
It is brilliant.
And there's a lot of that going on there. Yeah, the Thunderbirds are definitely Americans.
So the thing is, since you had a lead, the lead had to be American, not using it because they wanted a recognizable actor.
Yeah,
that's where Robert Culp came in.
Yeah,
they wanted. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they Lou Gray and Anderson, they wanted this to be the next Star Trek. Were they hoping for it to be like?
Well, Star Trek was kind of blowing up as a syndicated property.
Right.
And so there was a need for a new science fiction show, or it showed there was an audience for a new science fiction program. So, I think that was the preface of Space 1999, and I still think that is brilliant. But and the American leads were decided, I think, mainly by Lou Grade. And
what was the tie-in? I mean, wasn't the thinking also that they were familiar from Mission Impossible?
Yeah, they were
the selling point.
Yes, they were huge on Mission Impossible, and they were a husband and wife team. Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, but they wanted Martin Landau from Mission Impossible. Ironically, Martin Landau was the first guy offered the role of Spock before Leonard Nimoy, and he turned it down. Because he didn't want to do a role that was completely unemotional. He was just like, that's going to kill me to do that.
So he took this one and acted his face off.
Well, that's the thing is he always saw himself as a bit of a character actor. But people thought that it was a package deal, but he was hired first. And then because he was going to move his family over to the UK to do this, he said, well, what about Barbara Bain? She's on the show with me. She's great. Wouldn't it be great to have her as well? And they kind of wrote her into the show.
Well, they were kind of doing that We Come as a Set thing because they had just done a pilot with Steven Spielberg called Savage. And right after Space 1999, they hit their career low with Gilligan's Island versus the Harlem Globetrotters, where they also are together.
Rebounded with that.
What's that?
They rebounded with that.
Yeah, really, and that was that. But yeah, so they were kind of trying to market themselves as a duo at some point, but I didn't realize.
Sorry. I was going to say, but then where did Morse come from? He was a character. He was a British character actor, right? Or was he Canadian?
Actually, he's a British actor who lived in Toronto.
Lived in Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, and Barry Morse was on so much television, and just a side step, I ran into him on Yonge Street around 1987, and what a wonderful guy he was. He was so happy to be recognized. Like, are you Barry Morse? And I remember he went, guilty. And he actually said, you must know me from Space 1999.
I looked based on your age.
I was 17 at the time. I'm like, yes, but also, and I named, like, he did a British or Canadian TV series called Strange But True, and he was around a lot in the 70s on Canadian television because,
he ran into the right fan. I'm sure you made his day.
I made his day, but I also followed him for several blocks until I could get a break to talk because he had his daughter with him. And I remember, like, I was probably at Yonge and Bloor, which will make sense to some people, and it took me down to about Yonge and Wesley to approach him, where I kind of, like, I said, "Are you Barry Morris?" Because he was talking to his daughter, and the reason I knew it well was because I was walking behind them or in front of them, and I heard him say, "Well, we must be off," and I was like, "That's Professor Bergman." Like, as soon as I heard, because he spoke, he spoke exactly the way he actually spoke on television. And he was just he was a lovely guy.
Well, he was a great. If I could just interject, he was a great. So you had Commander Koenig, played by Martin Landau, and then you had the chief medical officer by Barbara Bain, and it was really a trio. And Barry Morris was Professor Bergman, and what was great about him, and unfortunately he was gone the second season. They said but he was the conscience for both of those characters. He was the guy that, he was sort of the voice of reason, where Koenig liked to play things a little hot-headed, to make things a little more exciting. And he was sort of the intellectual reflection of Koenig's character, of the character of Koenig. And that made, even though it might not have made for the most exciting action figure, it made for a really good character.
But it also made for an action figure that wasn't even on the show when it hit shelves.
He was Gerard on The Fugitive, and that thing ran forever. He must have been an attraction by the shoe, because The Fugitive was probably in syndication, and his face was pretty well known, right? Was he a bit of a get, or was it just sort of like give that to anybody, or was he? Because he must have had some weight to bring to it, right? Because of The Fugitive?
I think he was a good hire. I think he definitely was like he was. I would love to know why he left. I've never actually.
That's one of my questions. I can't believe you don't.
I think he walked off.
When Fred Freiberger came in, he revamped the entire second season.
Yeah,
we can get that.
Okay,
But did Freiberger say lose that guy, or did he quit, or did Morse quit?
Let's. I have my opinions on the second season, but let's stay focused on the first one for now, and then we'll just review.
I think it's important to say about the first season that it was the most expensive television program in the history of TV up until that point.
Yeah.
That's how big it was. That's how much money they were putting into it. And the effects were by Brian Johnson, who had done 2001: The Space Odyssey, and they had these intense models. And I think that's the one great thing that carried over from UFO was this amazing attention to detail and their miniatures, and just the cool, not only cool gadgets but cool machinery that felt logical in the space that they created. And so, Moonbase Alpha, the way it was spread apart, they had these travel tubes to go from place to place. They had an Eagle factory that you often saw, the way that they were creating and servicing eagles in the background when they would be talking. It was just extremely well done, and just the costumes and the look of the characters, and just the main mission element of it. They sort of created a bridge without having a bridge, which I thought was really smart.
Well, and they had possibly one of the most beautiful sets ever for a television program. Like the first main mission, or I can't remember which one's first, main mission or the command center. I know it was a bugger to light. That's the major problem with it. But you've never seen... It's a movie set. I mean, that command center is so elaborate and so beautiful that it's a joy to watch every episode where they're...
Well, see, this is where I come in as a bit of a novice, and I say that the look of it, the design, the money that's clearly on the screen, the miniature work, the ship design, the tube, just the overall look of it is really gorgeous. It's a beautiful looking show. I seeing it again, and let's, before we get to forget the delineation between season 1 and 2. We know what happened with season 2. We'll get to that and why it changed, radically, or that vibe. But even that first season, I have a hard time understanding what they're going for here. Clearly, a lot of time and effort and care. It looks, it doesn't. It is from a certain era, and you have to excuse, flared trousers and your hairstyle, phase and things like that. But you accept that and you excuse it, and it's fine. The stuff
Sideburns did make a huge comeback in the '90s, Jason.
Yes.
But it never seemed to look like, again, we're looking at stuff through different eyes sometimes, and when you're seeing it clearly on a giant screen, you're catching all the, the glue drying on the styrofoam rocks and, whatever. But Star Trek probably looked pretty good on a screen in 1968 on a color television. It probably looked, just fine. And Space 1999 always looked better to me than Star Trek. Star Trek's budget would show sometimes, and this show. But it also seemed like it was more cerebral or more dramatic. Did it set out with the idea that this is going to be something and it's going to go into syndication, or it's going to be like a Star Trek type thing? And with that comes merchandise for kids and coloring books and puzzles and all that stuff. Because it's toyetic in the sense of the eagle and the play sets and things like that. As far as daring do or action or, adventuring, I don't see that much in the show, especially the first season. It
owes so much to 2001, whether you're talking about the sterile aesthetic or you're talking about even orange spacesuits, and just the ships and their designs. It owes a tremendous amount to the intellectual elements of 2001, which, other than Star Trek, that pretty much informed much of sci-fi and the perception of sci-fi until Star Wars changed the game.
Yeah, if I can interject, before Star Trek, science fiction television was lost in space. It was, rocket ships.
Right.
And Star Trek changed the script, and it said, no, it's we're gonna talk about ideas, and we're gonna talk about a new future, and it's gonna be plausible. So then, 2001 happens, and then the other thing that happens is that a lot of science fiction from like 1969 to about 73 is also got a bit of a downer feel to it. So Space 1999 was very much a child where it's Star Trek, but we're going to embrace Space 1999, and we're also going to embrace all this kind of negativity that is, the cynicism that's happening in the next, 5 years, because it's not a happy series in any way.
It's not a fun. Yeah, it's not a fun show. But see, I know how much you love UFO, and I dug into that a while ago. UFO to me is vibrant. UFO to me is so, again, it's so filmic. The cars and the sequences, the chases, but there's fighting and there's other weird stuff. And
but the characters, that's also another show, and this is something I wanted to talk about, and I guess this is the point. Space 1999 was reviled when it came out. Like, if you pick up the book Fantastic Television, that guy just basically takes a dump on the series. And a lot of Star Trek fans, people with a bias towards Star Trek, were like, the characters aren't as interesting as Star Trek, blah, blah, blah. It's always compared to Star Trek.
Right.
And I was
lamented.
Pardon me?
Landau always lamented the fact that they didn't get the Star Trek fans on board.
Yeah, well, it became this kind of like baseball team thing. And, I can remember this because I was a toy and memorabilia dealer in the late 1980s, early 90s. And I had this one magazine, it was Q Magazine. It had like a Jack Davis drawing of Landau versus Kirk, and it said, like, can Space 1999 beat Star Trek? And I would put it on the table and try and sell it for $10. And I would get people who would come up to me and think I asked that question and yell at me. No, it doesn't have the characters. And I was like, I didn't, dude, I'm high. But the thing that I've always found interesting was, Star Trek was built out of the optimism of the 1960s, and Space 1999 was built out of the pessimism, cynicism of the 1970s. And this crew of the Starship Enterprise is on this ship that they can go anywhere and spread their good message. The people of Alpha they're like, where the hell did we go? And there's an episode I was just watching. It's one of my absolute favorites of the first season, which is called Mission of the Darians, where they go to this ark that has just become miserable. It's like a post-apocalyptic ark. And the people on that ark are like, join with us. You guys have got like weeks before you're dead. And Professor Bergman says something like, well, we're not there yet. So I don't necessarily agree that the characterizations are bad. I think that they are actually quite good for what they are. Just like in UFO, a lot of people want to compare UFO to Star Trek. This is a miserable circumstance. And
I think people...
Yeah, but I would just the thing that my observation and what I would say, the thing I remember most, reading about stuff all these years and certain magazines and poking fun at things, whatever, was that what UFO in 1999 got shit for was that here we go. The Andersons are now working with real people.
Oh,
and
they're just like puppets.
They're as wooden as the puppets that they worked with before, and they don't. No, I know, I get it. But and that could be a fault in the direction and some of that stuff too, because some of it is kind of, and this isn't a criticism, this is an observation. Some of it is a little more flatlined. It's wrong to compare it to Star Trek because they are two very different shows.
Yeah.
But what Star Trek had going for it, and to this day, the thing that stands out beyond the optimism and everything else, was the trio of those three characters. Three characters and the vibrancy of the energy of those three characters and a frontman like Shatner. You can't have three Nimoys. And Morse to me is really, every time he comes into a scene, he's trying to, he's picking it up. He's giving it some.
Well,
juice.
he has a lot of charm. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he's so charming. I will actually, this will make me controversial. I've never warmed to Barbara Bain.
Well, it's not as controversial as you'd think. That particular notion is not as controversial as you'd think.
Oh, they're getting the pitchforks out for me somewhere.
No. But
they were constantly comparing this to Star Trek, and for me, years later, I don't make that comparison because I know the shows were apples and oranges essentially. Yeah. And the thing is, what this was about was, it really, unlike. Well, Star Trek, you could say they're on a 5-mission exploring strange new worlds. They say it all in the opening credits, and Space 1999 essentially does the same thing. But if you watched it from the beginning, which sets the tone of the breakaway of the moon from Earth, and they're hurtling in a trajectory where they're either going to find a new world or crash into another planet, and each episode, each week, they're trying to find a new home and trying to troubleshoot problems to keep themselves alive and not destroyed from whatever's happening to Moonbase Alpha, you realize it's a very different dynamic and it's a very different approach. And I think they kind of painted themselves into a corner to a certain extent with that conceit, where each week they either have to find a planet or battle a bad guy. It sort of got a little bit repetitive. But the thing is, what we don't have now is what the context was at the time was there were a lot of progressive ideas. This is what I'm going to keep on saying Landau said, because this is what he did say, and this is how he thought about it. But that's kind of
can you start with actually, just so that we can.
Yes, actually, Landau said. Well, one of his favorite episodes was the Black Sun. And it's because everyone had to figure out a way to survive while they go through a black sun, which is now obviously known as a black hole, but at the time. But they go through and they meet God, and God is a woman.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation at the time.
I'm not surprised that's his favorite episode, because there's a lot for an actor to chew on. It is him and Barry Morse. Mm-hmm. Doing like a 1-2-man play at some point in it, and it's a great episode.
By the way, he's great. He's great. He is definitely. It's not like he doesn't care. Bain is very one note.
Yes.
But Landau is doing his kind of stiff upper lip leader kind of thing, and when he he emotes when he kind of needs to. But Bain is kind of. Did they also in the second season? Did she get kind of some of the episodes in the second season, she sort of does an intro, like a,
Yeah.
star date, star date 5825. We're doing this thing, whatever. And
She does that on certain episodes on her typewriter. Yes.
But then she doesn't seem to be in the episode immediately, following. Like there's one where Catherine Schell and Landau go to a planet and they pick a flower and they eat it or something.
Yeah, we'll get there.
And, okay.
Yeah.
But she doesn't seem to be in that. So did she kind of get phased out here and there from some of the second season? They put Schell up front more because she had.
Well, I think there is something to that. I think they needed a little more sexy, and that's where Catherine Schell comes in. And they also wanted to simplify it to kind of a monster of the week attraction to the action of what was going on.
They definitely wanted to do that.
We keep on saying we'll get to the second season, but I think you just have to touch on the fact that the second season, love it or hate it, is a direct response to sort of the clinical feel of the first season. And there's plenty of action to be had in the first season, but it's a smarter, more intellectual exercise. And it's more theoretical, but there's plenty of action if you look for it. It's just you got to wait for it.
Well, but it's not. I'm saying there's not. Yes, there is, but it's not in the sense of, and Star Trek had its episode. Again, the only thing to compare it to, because there wasn't a lot going on at the time, post Star Trek. You had UFO to me is like a spy series almost, or like an FBI or a CIA type spy series with these, aliens that are around doing stuff, and each one is like, could this guy be a spy? Could this be? And it's got gadgets and whatever. To me, that show's much more interesting to watch as a whole.
It's also less claustrophobic. So the thing is, Space 1999 is claustrophobic to a certain degree, whereas UFO, you had a real broad canvas to play on. You're on the moon, you're on the Earth, you've got a variety of characters under the water, in the air, on the moon base. So.
I don't really notice the locations. I don't really notice that it's hindered by, because there was one I was watching where they go down the. Those tubes that they go in are just fantastic, and it takes its time. Like when they go down, there's a shot that Landau and Bain and somebody else, the mustache guy, I think, or somebody, get into the tube, and when they down, they're not saying a word, and they get into the tube and they don't say a word, and then there's a shot of them in the tube heading to the other location, and they just kind of look at each other. It's really like letting itself breathe. It's not like filling up every second of screen time with back and forth or with banter or anything like that.
Well, that was also a day on Alpha where they were really just getting on each other's nerves. They didn't want to talk to each other because it's such close quarters,
Yeah, it could be that too. But it's endlessly interesting to look at. And the design of the comlink and I dig the uniforms in season 2 much more. I like the jackets.
They added more color to that.
That pink jacket he wears, that Landau wears in the shuttle, that away jacket thing is badass.
Yeah, I would wear that right now.
I have to say, my good friend Martin Landau told me actually that of the
Martin Landau.
Yeah, the Martin Landau. He said he really liked, even though they kind of looked like pajamas, he really liked those uniforms because you could tell from a distance what someone's rank was based on that arm color band. So, Koenig was the only one who had sort of the charcoal color.
The black,
if you worked in mesh, you had the red one. I think security was yellow. But he was like, in the military, it wasn't until you were up close that you actually knew the rank of somebody. Whereas here, he thought it was pretty clever that you could tell who was what position from so far away. He liked that element of it.
I also dig that it's a who's who of British character
and Italian.
That's right. Yes.
Brian Blessed and Leo McKern and
Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and Bernard Cribbins is in one of them. Shows
Season
up in one
2,
of the robot.
my favorite children's, that guy narrated my childhood.
And Joan Collins and Sarah Douglas and David Prowse and Julian Glover, who you'd find their way into Empire, Star Wars Empire, and so on.
And Brian Bowles, who was a very he's one of my favorite British character actors as well.
Which one? Who was it?
Brian Bowles. He played Baylor I'm probably butchering his name. He's a very tall actor, and it's a really horrific episode where they pick up this immortal guy who's imprisoned on a moon.
Has he got that tash, the like wig he's got a sweet tash that goes down his chin, down his cheek? That's the guy. I think I just watched.
He's like super tall, and he can whatchamacallit, he's immortal, and he brought immortality to his people, I think, and he turned out to also like bring them, because they were immortal, he was always bringing them horror, and it's a really dark episode.
There's some great concepts too.
Oh yeah, there's some really dire.
There's
concepts.
one where there's one with Brian Blessed and another bearded guy.
Death Out of Dominion.
And they're kind of, but they have all these like little dwarf cavemen running around and stuff.
Oh no, that's when he plays. Brian Blessed is in it twice.
He's in it twice.
He plays Maya's father in the first episode.
Mentor.
Of the second season. That's
Mentor.
The one.
Right, Mentor.
That's Another Dominion. I just have to jump in and say is one of my favorite episodes because it's
an amazing episode. Yeah.
Ice planet with this kicker at the end. I don't know if we should spoil it, but
I think we're good.
Go on. Oh.
Have we reached our statute of limitations?
I think you can spoil.
I think so. We usually spoil Space 1999 episodes. We're good.
Anyway, yeah, but once they think that this, even though it's this frozen rock, they believe that this could be a home for them, and there seems to be an immortality element to the people who live there.
Who are, by the way, I think from Earth. Yeah.
Yeah,
and but then
they're kind of going crazy, right?
They've lived there for 880 years.
Right.
They're expatriates from Earth, apparently, and but ultimately, when they take, is it Brian Blessed's character or a different character?
It's Brian Blessed's character, yeah.
And they put him on a Eagle to take him back to Alpha, and he just burns to a crisp. He ages and burns to a crisp when he's holding hands with Barbara Bain, and she goes, "Woo!"
And it's one of the most memorable stills. I think it's on the cover of that book, Fantastic Television, that completely just throws Space 1999 under the bus.
Also, in terms of guest stars, I can't believe there was that one Ian McShane episode where he kept on saying cocksucker because I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was just unbelievably bad. Yeah. That Ian McShane episode is one I watched recently, and it's just it's dark. He becomes a monster that kills other people on Alpha.
Is that season 2 or season 1?
It's season 1. Season 1. And he basically dies at the end of it. It really is, that's how season 1 was. It was a little bit nihilistic and cynical. And Space 1999 is a show of two minds. And I often think that I wish that they were kind of, I wish season 1 was a little bit more like season 2, and I wish season 2 had more of season 1 in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It never
totally
kind of found its flavor. And by the way, Patrick Troughton was in an episode of Space 1999, Jason.
Oh, see, I don't think I knew that. I did not know that. Oh, that's
awesome. The second season got goofier, but it also was a little more kid friendly.
Yeah, it's
the robot that what's his name played. Bernard Cribbins plays that robot called
Brian the Brain, which I think is hilarious because most people spell my friggin' name Brain.
It's huge. It's massive. That robot. That thing is the size of a Buick.
Yeah.
And a tiny little head. And I don't know if there's men inside of it that are pushing it around or what. But
there better be.
You can see in those episodes like that. You can see like, okay, the mandate is clearly, let's make this more, fun or more juvenile things or funner or whatever.
Well, let's go right there. Okay, season 2, the American office started having notes, just like they did when they created the series by saying, let's. And I've watched. There's a beautiful documentary done by Fanderson. I think it was done in the 90s when everybody was still alive, and they talked a bit about this. And of course,
I'd love to see it.
Oh, it's I'll send it to you. I'm sure I can find it.
Great.
It's a brilliant.
Yeah.
Like everybody's still able to tell you their stories, and the American audience had a lot of notes like, oh no, it needs to be more action. You need to get this out, and of course they hired Freddie Friedberger, who had famously done Star Trek, the third season, and I don't fully
and Wild Wild West.
And Wild Wild West, and I think he was on the Bionic Man or the Bionic Woman. That may have been after. I can't remember. Friedberger was a television professional. They did not love, like, if you watch that Anderson documentary, they were kind of like, yeah. I won't throw him completely under the bus for Star Trek Season 3 because there was budget cuts and all kinds of things, and he inherited this show. And there are some high points in Star Trek Season 3 that I really like, Spock's brain being the biggest one. But I unironically love Spock's brain. But when you watch the first, like the opening credits of Space 1999 for Season 2, it is like a Saturday Night Live sketch. It is like the most camp.
Yeah, just him shooting
action,
the gun, the laser coming out.
Yeah, they're like flashing red alert, red alert.
Oh,
and, see Landau, he gets up and he immediately shoots his laser.
Martin Landau never looked like, I loved Commander Koenig, but like, he's not William Shatner. He's not the guy you think is going to beat the crap out of five guys.
No, he's going to have a meeting in the conference room and talk about if they should beat the crap out of the guy.
Yeah, and he can fight, but he's not a really, like, and the first season really had a lot of that, where Koenig, when he did get in a fight, it didn't look like he was kicking everyone's ass,
Right.
In fact, he got his ass beaten a couple episodes, and it was sort of, Koenig always, to me, felt like the guy, and I liked this, I really did, where the guy, he's in a terrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch episodes, and Landau is, he's good at playing this guy, where he's in a horrible position and he acts emotionally and he makes bad decisions, and because that's what a human being would do. Like I believe he's a was it Stella Adler?
Method
actor, and this is who he would be. Commander Koenig is a real guy. He's a real miserable, middle-aged guy, and to paint him up like an action star was always kind of hilarious to me.
Well, it's funny. You know how you were saying, like, I wish season 1 had a little bit more of this, and season 3 a little more. The opening credits of season 1, and then when it says when they do the tease of this episode, so the opening credits of that tease is like, holy shit. You're just like, and maybe that's part of it too, is you see that opening and you're like, oh my god, this
is amazing.
My mind.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
And it's Barry Gray's epic music, which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, then the episode comes and you're like, okay, I wanted a little bit more. I wanted a little bit more.
Yeah, you're so hyped up by the opening credits, and then it actually starts, and you're lulled into sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, why change the theme though for season 2? Why even do that? The theme is fantastic. It's one of the best things.
Derek Wadsworth came in for the second season. I don't know. It's just they wanted to let viewers know that it was different. That this was, whether or not you thought it was more exciting. The theme was pretty exciting, even though this theme for the first one was pretty much impeccable and untouchable.
That guitar and the visuals and it's just
I would agree with both of you that this season, the one thing you didn't need to change was that beautiful music. Barry Gray outdid himself. I put that LP on about once a month when I'm cleaning the house or something like that.
And Brian, you've got a huge collection, right? I mean, do you have like everything from 1999, like all the puzzles and all the?
There was a time where I did. I have a very small collection now.
Do you have the figural banks?
Nope.
Which I didn't know they made until I looked it up the other day. That there's a figural bank of Barbara Bain.
There is.
I'd like to have that that in my house.
You put that next to your Cornelius bank. They're a good couple.
I do have the Cornelius and Dr. Zayas.
Just
Dr.
the fact
Zayas
that there
from
were
that.
kids, that there were enough kids to like go, yeah, I want the Barbara Bain.
Nobody wanted the Barbara Bain. Nobody wanted.
I want that.
Yeah, no,
Well, if we want to go into toy territory for a moment again, the dinky die-cast Eagles were both amazing and awful at the same time because and I always wanted an Eagle so badly, and I had the big one and I was very content with that. But
which
is
it's probably one of the
greatest
toys ever, one of the greatest things ever.
But the problem is, and I also had a model. I had an AMT model of an Eagle that I had hanging from my ceiling over my bed.
Fundamentals.
But I have to say, I wanted the dinky Eagle as well, but they had a limited amount of the white Eagles, and so everything else was this sort of like, Venusian green, sparkly paint Eagles, or I think they had blue as well. And I remember looking at them as a kid, just saying, I don't want that. That's not on the show. And I wish I had one now.
Yeah, I bought one in the 9th grade off a friend of mine for $10. I was so excited. He's like, yeah, I have one of those Space 2001 Eagles.
Did you get a white one, a green one?
A green one. I only I did later on buy a white one, but that has never bothered me. As a toy collector, I accept what I get. I'm not one of those guys. I mean, look at the Mego Enterprise Bridge. That is the most fun toy ever, and it looks nothing like the Star Trek Bridge.
Well, Dinky did those. They had a monopoly on the Gerry Anderson stuff. They did the Joe 90 cars. I think they did the UFO ones.
Yeah, the UFO stuff was stellar.
Yeah, in fact, I owned the UFO stuff as a kid and didn't know the television series it appeared on.
Oh, they're so beautiful. The designs are so.
Shadow 2 is
beautiful.
One of my favorite things ever.
Incredible.
Yeah, I have one right
and
behind
me. They did the Enterprise in a Klingon ship.
Yeah, the Klingon ship. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I still have the Enterprise. I have that.
I have the box of the Enterprise. I found it under a table at a toy show recently. You want it, David?
I wouldn't say no. Wait, I'm rolling around in my black hole sheets. Do I deserve another thing from you? But I won't say no. Absolutely.
It's fine. I don't want it. Because I don't have the Enterprise, so I'll send it over to you.
Well, thanks. I knew I did this podcast for a reason.
Brian, do you have
$10 perks?
Do you have the AMSCO Space 1999 Adventure playset?
No, and it tasks me. I have the AMSCO Planet of the Apes playset, and it's the greatest thing ever. I want one. It's just going to have to figure out, after the dust settles, I'm going to make some purchases, I think.
Well, there's one on eBay right now that's sealed. Just to
yes, I know. I put that on my own 5 awesome things on eBay just to plug myself a little bit.
I think we have to talk about the Remco utility belt. Something I did not have, but I had the Star Trek Remco utility belt. But I would have gone crazy for the Space 1999 one, because wasn't it screen accurate stuff on it?
Fairly, yeah. And I want to point out that in 1987, I was doing Star Trek conventions. I was selling, vintage toys and stuff. I was only 16 years old. And I met a woman, and she said, I have the LJN, working Comlux in the box. Do you want to buy them? And I said, of course. And I phoned her after the show. And we talked a little bit. And it was a fascinating time capsule of a conversation where she said, I don't like this new Star Trek series because I don't trust a bald man as the captain. And the other thing she said to me was, I think she was a doctor. So I bought these in the 70s. I thought they were pretty interesting, but it's pretty ridiculous that we're going to carry this kind of crap on our belts in the future. So I bought these, working Comlux, which are actually, LJN did a fantastic job on them. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're walkie-talkies, but they look exactly
like that's the one that I had where I used to pretend I'd go from room to room using one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I know exactly the one you're talking about.
But I always thought it was funny, 10 years later, we're all putting phones on our belt.
Yeah.
that aren't that much far from Comlux. Remco utility belts are of some of my favorite things. The Star Trek one, the Batman one, and the Space 1999 are to me the best things they ever did.
Oh yeah.
We can just forget about the Hulk one or the.
Well, come on, we all know the Hulk wore a utility belt.
Yes,
so
of course, it was called a rope.
It makes no sense that you would scoff at that.
Yes, and well, they did a Wonder Woman one that I will admit that every girl on my street owned, which was brilliant. It was a tiara, a belt, and the magic lasso with two bracelets, which was brilliant. But Hulk, Captain America, Superman, those we didn't need those.
Well, there was actually, it's funny with Space 1999, and Brian, you of all people can tell me what the difference was. Maybe it was a UK versus American, but like the Remco belt for Space 1999 had a very cool stun gun. It had like a watch, and it had a comm-lock. But the comm-lock, for one, was a crappy green, who knows what it was from. It looks like it was a G.I. Joe leftover versus one that was screen accurate. Do you know which was which?
No, I'm not 100% sure on that one, actually.
Yeah.
There's a British version that has a different box, and it actually has Paul Morrow on the box. But that's just because a different distributor picked that up in the UK. It's very possible.
That's probably the one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't own either, sadly, and I wish I did. But they're highly coveted, to be perfectly honest with you. There's a group on Facebook called Space 1999 Collectibles that is incredibly busy, like more busy than you would think. It is mostly Eagle stuff, but I don't know if you know this, but they're still producing Eagle toys, and there's been 2 different Commander Koenig action figures promised for this year. There's a 1/6 scale by Big Chief Studios, and then another company I think called 12 Collectibles. Jason, do you remember the Product Enterprise guys?
Yeah, 1612, I think
1612. They are promising a whole slew of 6-inch action figures. Now that, because from what I understand, the rumors are that Lando and Bane were nonplussed about not getting cut into that merchandise. And for years, if you did a Space 1999 toy, you could not feature Lando or Bane. Classic TV Toys, a Florida-based company that I know quite well, they're now called Figures Toy Company. They did an elaborate amount of Space 1999 Mego-sized figures in 2004. There was no Commander Koenig and there was no Dr. Russell. And I always found that odd, and then if you look at any of the model kits that have come out in the last few years, they feature Catherine Schell and Nick Tate, Alan Carter, who was definitely the Scotty of Space 1999.
Yeah. If you look at the AMT models, it could be a different brand. I'm sorry if it's not AMT, but if you look at the current crop of Eagle models. Nick Tate has like a signature version.
Yes.
Where he's on.
And I mean, it's well deserved. I mean, I love Nick Tate. And
who was the guy
who ended up being the trailer voice that most of us know in half the trailers we listen to.
No kidding. I didn't realize that Nick Tate did that.
Yeah, Nick Tate is. There's like two or three key trailer guys. There's the In a World guy. And then there's Nick Tate, and if you listen to him side by side, you'll recognize them.
It's really funny. It was a few years ago. A friend of mine, he was starting to sculpt toys for Mego, and somebody sent him. He said, "Well, what's the scale of these things?" And they sent him a bunch of, I think, Alan Carter heads. And my friend goes, "I know this guy because he worked on him on FX the series."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember who the lead on FX the series, but Nick Tate played his dad. And FX the series was filmed in Toronto, and my friend goes, "Oh, it's Nick Tate!" I had a box of Nick Tate heads.
Oh, I also want to add, though, when you say that Martin Landau didn't want to sign stuff, I very much believe that. But
no, he didn't want to.
actually,
He didn't want to do licensing after the fact. He wanted to get
oh,
paid. I think I have lots of signed Landau 1999 toys. Apparently, he was a gracious person to meet.
well, that's the thing I was going to say. Actually, Martin Landau told me that he was very pleased when Tim Burton came to him and asked him to sign his Space 1999 lunchbox.
Oh,
he was
yeah,
very
no, he
happy to oblige.
I think the part I heard was they just weren't happy that they didn't get cut into that. I don't think it spoiled back to the fans. I think it was like, hey, if you want to put our face on stuff, we want more.
Right.
And that isn't unreasonable. A lot of actors do that, and you know, like
1612 are they're doing the comlink and the gun too, aren't they?
And that is one of the most incredible space guns. Like you've alluded to that before, but I prefer that to the phaser. I had that water pistol, the AHI water pistol, as a kid, and I pretty much destroyed it. It was just absolutely the coolest prop replica ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, next to the Eagle, it seemed to be the most merchandised bit of the show. Like there was a squirt gun, there was a disc gun, there was a thing that you wound into the front of it, right? Like it shot like spinners or something. It was like, because it had that bit at the end, and then there was the one that just shot discs.
Well, wasn't there
one that lit up too? Wasn't there like a Remco?
Yeah. Whatever Remco did for Star Trek, they just put Space 1999 on top of it, and it worked. Utility belt. They didn't have the rights to do the CSF, but Mattel did their own Vertibird version of the Eagle. It's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would, if there was a phaser water gun, they did a phaser water gun. If there was an Enterprise water gun, there's an Eagle water gun. There's actually some very rare Remco stuff where, there's a remote control moon buggy that's extremely rare. There's a wind-up moon buggy. They did all kinds of wonderful things. Parachuting Kirk and Spock. Well, you got a parachuting Lando and astronaut. You didn't get a parachuting Barry Morse, sadly.
He didn't want to jump out of the plane.
No, he didn't. He didn't want to jump out the plane. So second season, they swapped. And I think this is one of the things that kind of hurt Space 1999. Just like Doctor Who, you change the Doctor and all the action figures on the shelf are no longer valuable.
Right.
All this merchandise came out in '76, and then of course half of it was unrecognizable. I mean, the uniforms changed. Your new lead character, they added a Spock in the terms of Maya, which was played by Catherine Schell, who was in the first season episode. She was the guardian of Puri. And later on in a magical episode of Doctor Who, City of Death. And she just recently surfaced. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but she recently surfaced in Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss' Dracula as a countess, I believe, in the second episode.
Yeah, that's right.
I gotta watch that again. As a countess in the second episode on the boat?
Yep, that is Maya. That is Catherine Schell.
Oh my God.
That's
that blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I know who that is. And
there was a blonde that was on a couple episodes in the second season, and she was
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she's got a funky name, but she was in a couple of Hammers, I think. Wasn't she like a vampire one, or Dracula does something to women, or something it's called? So
Dracula does something to women. That is the title of the film.
Dracula takes women out for dinner and then bites them later. I don't know.
I think it's called Dracula Cleavage, a Hammer production.
Yeah, she's in a vampire one.
Anushka Hempel, is that her name?
Yes, that's her.
Holy crap! I need help.
She was also in a racy, slightly nudie UK picture in the early '70s, based off a racy daily comic strip of like this female character that always loses her top in these little comics. Well, they made a live action. It's true. They made a live action movie with her, and it's bonkers, and it's actually streaming. It's on Amazon Prime right now. I forget but it's called she's called like Jane something or Susie something. It's whatever the name of the movie is. But
I think I know what you're talking about.
And when I'm looking at these Space 1999s, I'm seeing this. I'm like, why do I know this woman? And I realize it's from that wacky early 70s sex romp, UK sex movie or whatever. It's not really a sex movie. It's just more like racy and like, ooh, there's a nipple, like.
What was cool was about going back to just sort of the casting and all the supporting cast of Space 1999 is that they were going also very much on the Roddenberry template. They were going for a nice multicultural cast.
Actually, Gerry Anderson himself wanted Maya to be black.
Mm-hmm.
He was very into that, and
Well, I wanted to say that one of the supporting characters, her name was Yasuko.
Yes,
she was the Japanese woman. Played, she has 3 lines, but she's always there in the background. But her name is Yasuko Nagazumi, and she was also a Bond girl. As one of the bath girls when they're giving Bond a bath.
Holy cow!
She was also in Rollerball as a masseuse, but I don't think she even got a credit for that. But her claim to fame is that her daughter, Mickey, I'm going to screw up the name, Mickey Berigny or whatever. Anyway, if you're a fan of the band Lush, which I'm a huge fan of, she's the lead singer, and so her mom is the Space 1999 girl. And so
not the one with the short hair, right? Not the one with the short hair that's kind of
No, that's Ziena Martin.
Yeah, that's Sandra Benish. Ziena Martin, yeah.
Okay.
She's in 35 episodes.
Yeah.
Yasuko is in 8 episodes, mainly second season if I'm not mistaken.
And who's the guy? Who's the guy with the tash in season 1?
That's Prentice Hancock.
Listen, when these guys, because I think Rimmer died, right? Didn't he die?
Shane Rimmer's character died, I think, in the first episode. Yeah.
No. I mean the actor, because I might take his name. I might go down to SAG and rename myself Jason Rimmer and take the Rimmer number.
You can
just go with Shane Rimmer.
Shane Rimmer Jr.
Prentice Hancock, which is a phenomenal name.
A wonderful guy, by the way. He's on Facebook.
Did he not show up? Is he not in season 2? Did they lose him for season 2?
They killed him off posthumously. I think it was stupid. He ended up being in 2, I think maybe 3 Doctor Who episodes.
Yeah. He was
what was one? Planet of Evil. Planet of Evil.
Yep.
Oh God.
He was essentially replaced
the Ribos Operation.
By Tony Anholt, who played Tony.
Tony Verdeschi, yeah.
Yeah, so that sort of character space was replaced by Tony, who was like a main character in the second season.
What was the other Doctor Who you said, Brian?
Ribos Operation.
Yes, it was Ribos because it was one of the Key to Time ones, right? Wasn't it the Ribos?
Yeah, and I think he's in another Doctor Who. I think he's actually in 3 Doctor Whos.
Wow.
He's actually a good actor. I just watched him last night in the Monster Squad. Monster Club. The Monster Club?
Peter Cushing, Vincent Price one.
Yeah, the Monster Strip Club.
Yeah. Planet of the Daleks. He's actually in 3 Doctor Whos. But I think I love him most for Planet of Evil, which was known at the time to actually have I think it actually got better ratings than Space 1999, even though he was actually on both shows at the time.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Is this because there's a lot of UK merchandise, like, annuals and, comic strips and, I think, the TV magazine we always talk about, that they did stories on the show. Did it have a big UK audience? Did merchandise and viewership and stuff? Did it do well over there?
I think it did well, but one of the things I noticed from years of reading SIG magazine was that it had the worst distribution across the UK. To where episodes weren't airing until 78 in certain parts of the UK. So it wasn't like it got a national broadcast anywhere. It was syndicated in the United States, and that meant, your local market could put it on at 8 o'clock at night on Saturday if it wanted to, or it
Right.
could put it on at 2 o'clock at Sunday afternoon. And Space 1999 suffered a lot from that. The second season, I think there was a lot of hope and promise that this would be the way to go. But I don't know if you agree with me, David, but it got pretty stupid for the
Yeah, it got
second
pretty
season.
stupid, but Lou Grade, he kind of tanked the show because he didn't have the budget.
Yeah.
Because remember we were talking about this when we were talking about Saturn III. Raise the Titanic essentially killed not only Saturn III, but it also killed Space 1999.
Yeah.
And they had planned a third season, but because Raise the Titanic, they pretty much used the marketing budget for Lou Grade's Hollywood movies that were more than a season of an entire season of Space 1999, essentially. And so it was way too expensive, and they didn't have enough money. And so I think a combination of the silliness and a prospect of a season 3 that Martin Landau wanted to go back to basics, more like season 1, because he was butting heads a lot, even though he says that they got along in the end. They were having lots of arguments / conversations, he and Freddie Freiberger, about what was going on in season 2. They kind of, dropped the whole thing.
Yeah, it ended kind of abruptly, and I think it kind of could have gone on, to be perfectly honest with you, because it was a syndicated program and internationally distributed. I think it could have survived another season, definitely. But yeah, it just seemed like it kind of got the rug pulled out from under it.
Yeah.
And you guys must be aware of the new audio adventures. I think Big Finish might be doing them. Do you know about these?
I'm
No? Tell us more.
I'm mildly like I saw them. I think it's Nicholas Briggs, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the same guy that does all the Doctor Who stuff, I think.
Yeah, I saw it. I think it's in one of my favorite magazines, Infinity, right now.
So they're doing audio episodes, or what exactly is going on?
I think they're either new adventures or they're taking scripts that didn't get filmed or something. They've got a bunch of that are, I think, doing Koenig and Bane. What's her name?
Bane,
I think those same characters. I think.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely Space 1999.
With the Power Records book and record set, and with the Power Records audio chronicles on vinyl that I used to listen to, and I still have.
I still have those too. The second one of those is the most ridiculous Power Records I own. They go back in time to Earth. They meet Noah.
Yep, Noah's Ark.
Do nothing and go back to Alpha.
Hey, listen, Abraham Lincoln could do a guest stint on Star Trek. Then Noah's
but
Ark.
at least he fought Klingons in that episode.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the comic book series, the Charlton Comics series.
I really love the Charlton comics. I especially like the magazines because I had those as a kid, and Gray Morrow injected way too much sex into those.
Yeah.
The covers of those Charlton covers are incredible.
They're gorgeous, and I think they were the benchmark for merchandise. David, you just talked about opening a puzzle that had the Charlton covers on them. When the laser discs came out for Space 1999 in the 90s, they used the Charlton covers for both seasons. Unfortunately, both of those got cut after doing, I believe, just one Maya story. Everything ends with Maya, and that's it, the introduction of Maya.
It just ended, huh?
Yeah.
But that was an amazing cover as well, I have to say.
Yeah, well, I think John Byrne did a couple of issues of that. Joe Staton started doing it, then it was John Byrne. I can't remember who ended it, but it was the Maya issue. And then, of course, the magazine, I largely remember just Gray Morrow because but they got all kinds of funky stuff in there. The one thing about the magazine that always made me laugh was they called the computer ComCom. And it's because it was like an early draft of Space 1999 where it said the computer's name was ComCom. But it was just like one of those things. But, Charlton $6 Million Man comics always had Steve Austin using the laser out of his eye, too.
Right,
So,
right.
like, oh, yeah, I remember that on the show.
That was a huge... People, sorry to jump in there, but I got to say that a lot of people, they kind of only remember Marvel and DC when they think back of things, and maybe Harvey Comics, but Charlton Comics had great stuff, and I read both the $6 Million Man and the Space 1999 stuff pretty religiously.
Yeah.
Only 25 cents they would broadcast. But
I was a huge Gold Key guy as a kid.
Of course,
yeah,
with Star Trek. And I think we'd be remiss if we don't mention the Milton Bradley Space 1999 board game,
which I have recently played.
I've got it, and I haven't played it in 100 years.
Well, my friends and I, just out of boredom, went to Buffalo to go to a toy show. They said there was a toy show. It was really just an excuse to hang out. We get to this toy show, and we walk in the door. It's at a Shriners Hall in Buffalo, and there's a psychic fair going on. Like one of the crystals and stuff, and it's like, oh, well, maybe we were misinformed. And I'm standing in the hallway of the Shriners Hall, just, there's worse places I could be. I enjoy looking at this culture. And my friend goes, no, the toy and comic show's at the end of the psychic fair. Like, we have to walk into the whole thing, and there's a few tables at the back. And there was just 4 or 5 very sad-looking dealers, and I said to myself, well, I'm going to go home with something. I don't know what it is. And one guy just had the complete Space 1999 game for $10.
Oh, nice.
And I make your day and buy this. And my wife and I played it about a month ago, and it's not the world's greatest game, but it was kind of fun to play. I think you needed a bunch of people.
Kind of a spiral, right?
Yeah, I think our takeaway was it has to be more than 2 people.
Yeah,
because it ended rather quickly, and we were like, yeah, I think you need more adversaries in this. But it's definitely a big, beautiful board game, and there's a lot of gorgeous Space 1999 merchandise out there. They're just incredible stuff.
Like the chest pack radio.
The chest
you
pack
want to listen
radio.
To the radio. You wear it on your and it's got a microphone.
It's got a microphone.
It got a ton of merchandise. It
did.
Lot.
Well, they came at a beautiful time when Mego and Remco and AHI were selling shit tons of Star Trek merchandise. I mean, this was a like, I know that there was an episode of The Toys That Made Us recently that kind of like insulted Star Trek merchandise, but it was like a $50 million thing in 1975 and 76. It was big money back then, and that's pretty great for a show that was off the air. So the licensing agent for Space 1999, which I believe was actually Hanna-Barbera, was handling the licensing for Space 1999 in the United States, because certain toys like the LJN Roadmasters say copyright Hanna-Barbera. They marched in to every available company and said, this is the new Star Trek. And they got the Viewmasters, they got the Halloween costumes, they got the board games, they got the color forms. Like, it was just whatever they were doing for Star Trek, they went, yeah, let's do that too. So I always think it's kind of ironic that Martin Landau, this wonderful character actor, was so heavily merchandised in the 1970s.
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, it was normal to me. It was like that was John Koenig, so it was what it was, I want to make sure that in this conversation, if I could jump in about that, is I have a couple favorite episodes, and I realize they both include monsters, and but they're not Maya monsters. So I mentioned Dragon's Domain earlier,
which is a complete classic.
That's when I wanted to show Space 1999 to my son, and I debated which one should I put in. I put that one in. And that's the one he knows, that he associates with Space 1999.
It's
and
the one that most people remember.
Well, it's also in the lunchbox,
Yes.
and that I think makes a big difference as well. Is that you have this killer, multi-tentacled, one-eyed, glowing-eyed creature, and that to me just blew my mind because it was haunting.
It's scary.
This thing hypnotizes you into luring you under its little mouth there, and it sort of spits you out 5 seconds later as
a bag of bones.
Smoking corpse.
Yeah.
So there's that one, and then there's the other one that involves monsters that is arguably, to anyone who talks about Space 1999, arguably the goofiest episode, or at least the goopiest episode, and it's the Bringers of Wonder, Part 1 and Part 2.
Well, that's Destination Moonbase Alpha. I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and that's
I don't think that's the goofiest.
Well, I think the monsters, if you show it to anyone, it's just ridiculous because they look like one-eyed monsters.
Yeah.
And they look like giant dripping candle wax creatures that only...
David, I have a big bush in my front yard that looks exactly like one of those, and every Halloween I put a big glowing eye orb in it.
Nice.
And I've had to post that to like Space 1999 groups on Facebook because there's nobody who gets it in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, for the obscure reference department, no one's going to get that.
Yeah.
I watched the one. There's the one where they eat the apple and the trees like hold them responsible, and they're gonna.
Oh, that's Rules of Luton.
And he's like, you got to fight these three creatures. You got to fight these three.
Yeah, it's Arena. That was actually that's blamed on Freddy Freiberger.
It's totally Arena, and it's also like the makeup is ridiculous. But the favorite line I think of anything I watched recently was the episode where Maya has got a fever or something, and she changes into this Paul Stanley looking, zombie creature with long hair and whatever, and she knocks out Barbara Bain. And then goes to wreak havoc, and nobody knows that it's Maya. No, and everyone thinks it's just a monster that got on board the ship. And first off, the order is kill this thing, set to kill. Like that's just the instinct is to kill this thing. Everybody, security, kill it. She's asleep, and when she wakes up and they say, Barbara Bain, what happened? What happened? What happened? Like there's a monster going. She goes, no, Maya turned into some kind of space monster. The fact that she says space monster killed me. Because that would be the description in the TV guide or the script, like, oh, she's turned into a horrible space monster. But she says she turned into a horrible, get this, not a land monster, not a water monster, a space monster.
Well, that's like Mark Hamill calling a lightsaber a laser sword. It's like somehow it doesn't quite gel, but it's funny.
It's very fun. It's very
the actual thing that in the Fanderson documentary is. They got notes saying, monsters, we need monsters.
Sure.
So you get these ridiculous episodes like Maya turning into a bunch of monsters, and there's the one with David Prowse where he's a monster attacking. And then they actually got a note back that said, what are you doing with all these monsters? Stop it. And
too many monsters.
So, like, the notes from the United States office both created the show and ruined the show at the same time. They didn't know what they were doing, and some of those monsters are incredibly goofy. And,
Brian, do you have a favorite episode?
That's tough for me. Because, it's tied into nostalgia. I would have to say probably 2. Earthbound, because I think it's the best episode that what the show should have been. Which is, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I'm sure you have, David. Christopher Lee's spaceship crashes. They lose a person. Alphans try to open the suspended animation capsules, and they kill one of Christopher Lee's cast or crew. They are going to Earth. The reason that they're on Moonbase Alpha is because the ship was supposed to land on Earth's moon, and it found Earth's moon. It just wasn't near Earth anymore. And one of the characters on the show, Commissioner Simmons, knows there's a 4th compartment to go back. He he forces Koenig to put him on the ship, and apparently, you find out at the last minute that the computer actually picked Simmons because he was a useless politician. But as he's flying away for the 100-year journey to Earth, he wakes up in the suspended animation capsule.
Yeah.
And you realize that he's going to die in there.
Oh.
And it's very Twilight Zone episode. It's very dark. It's very well executed. My second favorite one would be Mission of the Darians, which we already talked about, where, again, the Alphans show up. This isn't Star Trek. This is a society that's messed up. The Alphans are not the moral high ground. They're basically like, you're disgusting, and we accidentally destroyed your horrible way of existence. You got to figure this crap out, and they leave. And I found it way more realistic than a Star Trek where Kirk goes, "Well, I blew up your god, bye." Koenig's like owning it. He's like, "You screwed up here. You killed some of my people. I don't care." And those are probably my two favorite episodes. Although I love Rules of Luton. I love Bringers of Wonder.
Do you feel
the Wonder Twin Powers?
What's that?
Do you feel that the show has...
Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Well, do you feel that the show has like an edict, like a Bible to it, where it has the rules that it sets up, and they bend a little bit here and there, or the character, like a Batman thing where Batman says, "I'm not going to kill," and then episode 8 he cuts someone's head off or something.
It's not a mess like that, but it could have used a little more of where are we going with this.
Right.
What's our vision here?
Right.
And it was much more streamlined in the first season, but the second season, one of the things that Landau would battle,
Martin Landau?
Freddie Freiberg. Yeah, my friend Martin Landau would battle Freddie Freiberg over the inconsistency each week, over what he wanted to do with the character versus the truth of the character. And so the thing is, Freiberger's like, people aren't going to remember last week, and you could do this because it's better for the story. And Landau, who would work tirelessly after shoot days on the script, sort of behind the scenes to make things better, he would constantly battle Freiberger, saying, my character would not do this. It was really that kind of stuff.
And he was right, because science fiction fans of all the people will remember what is going on next week.
Yeah.
Right. They really paid attention to the details, and I think that was one of the greatest arguments of 70s and 80s sci-fi, is that we were paying attention. We did notice.
Well, who is that? There's another guy that showed up too. That younger guy, the dark-haired guy that shows up in season 2.
Tony Verdeschi.
Tony?
Yeah.
So were they trying to like bring in like a younger man of action kind of thing that he was supposed to be?
Yeah, he was supposed to be like Maya's love interest and a younger. Like, I don't know why they removed Prentice Hancock, because he would have been perfect for that. But and he kind of had a subdued relationship with Sandra that was shown throughout the first season.
I forgot. Here's what I wanted to ask. In the episode about Brian the Brain, or Brain the Brian, or whatever it is, he does a test with Bain and Landau and puts them in 2 chambers and says, I'm going to suck the oxygen out of this thing, and we're going to see if you guys love each other, because one of you is going to hit the button and give your oxygen to the other person. Do you love each other? And they say, no. And he says, okay, well, let's see. And then he puts them in there. And then they kind of allude to it afterwards. But, like, were they a thing were the characters a thing on the show? Were they like a romantic thing on the show?
The first season, no. The second season, they were a couple.
Yeah, and they were very obviously a couple.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to throw in The Full Circle. There was an episode called The Full Circle.
It's a trippy one.
And it's they're serving this. Huh?
Sorry, I just laughed. I can listen to you guys all day. I love that you guys love this so much.
Yeah.
Episode names. Like, oh, that's a tricky one.
They made a puzzle of that
time
episode.
Vortex on this planet, and they become cavemen.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You haven't lived until you've seen Barbara Bain as a cave person.
And they took it very seriously, and there's a whole cave politics head bashing scene, where they're fighting for dominance, and it's good stuff. And actually, it's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen for what's arguably a kid's show, where they practically want to rape Sandra. in a particular scene. It's pretty intense.
So it was okay. So it was kind of, the idea was they wanted families to watch this thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When you say the 2001 aesthetic, that's the bit I don't understand, because as well as that movie did at the time, nobody would say it was a laugh riot or like exciting or whatever. But
visually and conceptually, it was incredibly influential.
Yes.
And that's what it takes from it.
That's not the thing that gets people wanting to go out and buy the toys or whatever. So it was Star Trek started out one thing, but I think it always had an eye on there was going to be some kind of merchandise for kids, because they did have some stuff the time the show was on that was licensed for kids. Just put a sticker on it and sell it to kids. So was this did season 2 become more geared toward kids, or was the show in general, they were thinking we're going to get families, we're going to get adults, we're going to get intelligent science fiction and morality stuff, but at the same time we're making we're gonna make this toyetic, and there's going to be fun, kids are going to dig it too. Was it kind of aimed at kids?
I think it's, and I think Brian probably has the more logical answer. For me, emotionally, I think it's coming straight off of the fact that UFO was very toyetic, with lots of cool gear and gadgets, and so Space 1999 was a logical succession of that. So it didn't have to do with 2001. It had to do with cool spaceships and futuristic cool things. And they had already established a pattern of turning UFO, which was arguably a little more for adults also, but they still were able to turn it into toys for kids. Same thing with Space 1999, but the difference is Season 1 versus Season 2. Season 2 is much more aimed at kids, where Season 1 was much more intellectual adult viewing.
I think at that time, we were, like look at there was Vegas merchandise. There's Kojak merchandise. Kojak is about fishing dead hookers out of the lake. Yeah, like we can't look at it under the patina of now. We have to go like, why the hell was anyone buying Kojak merchandise if you were 5 years old? Like, you shouldn't have been watching Kojak.
I would argue, and this is probably, there's no basis of logic to this, but I would argue Alien ended all of that, at least for a time period, in terms of something that wasn't appropriate for kids, but they turned it into toys anyway.
Well, Alien, and I think Conan, because Mattel went, like, that started to happen where there's boobs in this, we can't make a toy of
right.
it.
Right.
But there was a point where, like, I have some very questionable merchandise in my collection of things that's like, why did they try? There's a Blood Island jiggler that I would pay money and my own blood for, but Blood Island movies have tons of nudity in them. And
right, but I'm saying the argument could be made for like Kojak and some of that stuff. Yeah, but it's like they're not setting out to make a kids show. They make a hit show that suddenly, becomes like, well, kids are going to dig, like Starsky and Hutch. I'm not sure that was aimed at kids.
Well, Star Trek wasn't aimed at kids either, necessarily.
No, it wasn't, but it didn't have the violence in it that Kojak and Starsky and Hutch did and stuff. So to me, that's.
But I mean, in terms of when they.
Kojak, there's not a lot of stuff out there. Kojak's a cop show. Kids, it's like whatever. Like, things were different then too.
Hey, I had the Starsky and Hutch board game.
But there's a way to sort of I'm saying Lost in Space. It's a different animal, I get it, but that to me was more, the intention was fun, light, a little deeper in the earlier ones, and they went monster crazy too, etc. But it always seemed more toy, family, lighter.
Well, the thing is, I think what you're implying here, where I know the answer, is that people, the guys who make the merchandising out of this, they see the opportunity. They're not going to put too fine a point on whether or not the content is kid friendly, and if it's a family friendly thing. They see something that's merchandisable and dollar signs, they're going to do it, and they'll, it's like, don't ask permission, just do it and wait for the complaints.
Right, but I'm saying that something like, let's say Kojak or Starsky and Hutch, and Brian, you'd know better, like merchandise from the second it hits the airwaves? I don't necessarily know. But with Space 1999, the thing that was different about that was you had this model in place, Star Trek, which was something. Yes, it was a couple years older, but by the time this show hits the air, the Star Trek merchandise for a show that's been off the air for 5 or 6 years is massive, is huge. Mm-hmm. So they've got to be looking at it in the sense of, we're going to make this thing, but we're going to aim it slightly at kids and assume they're going to be there for this.
Yeah, it's called. It's if you want any sort of inclination to this, we did this episode. It was called Dune, and everybody went. None of those people went, well, what's this about? They just signed a check and made, merchandise that no children should have seen.
If the Dune coloring book can be made the way it was made,
with
then
dead people in it and zits being popped and the machine just cranked. No one was paying attention.
Right, but again, you know what I'm saying. Like it wasn't aimed at with
no. And when you look at the Space 1999 Viewmasters, it's the episode The War Games, and it's an exciting episode of Space 1999. It's one with space battles and ships
with the Hawks. There's the Eagles and the
Mark
Hawks.
9 Hawks. It is way better than the Star Trek Viewmasters, which are based on the episode The Omega Glory, which is not the best episode of Star Trek. I would have preferred Viewmasters of Spock's Brain. At least there'd be something colorful to look at. It's just that sort of thing where merchandise just cranks out sometimes without a lot of thought, and that's where our sense of humor comes from. And,
well, yeah, I'm saying.
Hey, were there Kojak parachute rack toys?
In my dreams, yes.
Okay, just checking.
I'm saying, again, if you go back to the history of Gerry Anderson stuff, Gerry Anderson was a proven name that was proven to tie in with merchandise and toys.
Yeah, and Space 1999 was they sold a ton of Eagle stuff. They were selling Eagles into the 80s. You can find in toy trade magazines when Star Trek or Star Wars hit, Dinky putting full page ads showing the Eagle and the Starship Enterprise.
Right.
And it's because those ships just sold and sold and sold.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to find out.
But did kids love every episode of Space 1999? Some.
No, but that was.
I could also vouch that as a 7-year-old in 1975 watching Space 1999, I guarantee you I did not follow to the letter the dialogue and the plots. Right. I guarantee you in that first season I probably got lost half the time, but it didn't matter because we were geared, and if you guys remember this very specifically, a lot of times you just had to wait for the stuff that you wanted to see. You had to wait until Basil Exposition was done chit-chatting about whatever. There was a punch, an explosion, a car chase, a monster shows up. I can't, and I digress, but I can't tell you how many, Hammer horror movies or anything like that where you had to wait for half the movie before you saw the monster appear. Right. And Space 1999 was very much the same way for me as a kid.
Yeah, we were all kind of spoon-fed that.
Kids at that time would have been the kind of thing that Star Trek's doing well in syndication, merchandise is selling, people are geared for this, and when this new science fiction show shows up with ships and creatures and lasers and things like that, I would have thought that the merchandise, maybe it wouldn't have done gangbusters like Star Trek did, but that people would have been hungry for the merchandise that were already keyed into something like Star Trek. Like this thing came along because it was in that window of that unique window post Star Trek, pre Star Wars.
And they used the Star Trek template and they flooded the market with everything. So games and Viewmasters and toys and comics and da-da-da. And I have to say, Jason, I think you're just maybe a little upset because in comparison to Flash Gordon, Space 1999 got a lot more merchandise.
Well, but that's there you go.
I'm being facetious, but it's also true.
That's the thing that stands out where we go, if everything else at the time people were eager to to get going merchandise wise. Why would that not have? That's what was always so interesting about that. Like, how could this not happen, kind of thing. So the Space 1999 thing is like there was a lot of stuff that was made, ton of stuff.
By the way, Jason, I have to say your Flash Gordon merchandising is my Star Trek II Wrath of Khan merchandising.
Oh, that's another
stars.
Well, yeah, thing. Star Trek II, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right? Like, finally, like Star Trek, there was so much merchandise, and I didn't want to buy pretty much any of it. Star Trek II came out, and I was like, where are the action figures? Where's all the good stuff? And there was absolutely nothing except like a tie-in novel.
Yeah, we did that episode. Well, we talked about it, Brian. It was like that ton of motion picture stuff,
which was still on the shelves when Wrath of Khan came out.
And then nothing for 2, and then 3 gets those strange Erdl action figures.
Oh yeah. Well, you guys have Star Trek II. You have Flash Gordon. I have Logan's Run.
Logan's Run.
Which
there you go.
got
another one.
Nothing.
And that's confusing to me too, because you'd think movie and then the TV series, and by the time the TV series hits, people know more about the movie and whatever, and yeah.
Well, there's the carousel playset. You didn't have that?
Oh no, I didn't. I missed that one. But every time I look at the Automan action figure that was available, or the Manimal rack toys that Laramie Fleetwood did, I go, what the hell? Like, we got nothing. We got a towel with Ferris face on it and a mug with Ferris face on it. And I think there's a puzzle of the poster. I think that pretty much, is the entire Logan's Run collection, and that's
I think that's probably an example of it was a film for grown-ups, and someone did not want to spend the money on the marketing to turn it into a bunch of kids' toys. Like someone, like, I'll bet even if it was floated, someone said, "Well, it's a movie for adults. We don't want to do that." Someone had some sense, which means we lost out.
we totally lost out. Like, I'm glad. I think I would lose my mind if Saturn III merchandise existed, or
Oh, there's got to be a Hector somewhere. But I also, I'll take this opportunity to throw out to Mego that I still want a Logan 5 action figure, please.
They at least tried. From what I understand, they bought it to protect the FARA license.
Right.
But because, other people were, they were licensing Charlie's Angels to get Farrah's image. And Mego had spent a lot of money on this Farrah Fawcett doll, so they bought the Logan's Run license for, $5,000, and just said, bury it. And then the TV series came around, and they actually thought, well, maybe we could do something with this, which is good. But yeah, it just drives me crazy that there was,
But they never did anything for the TV series, correct?
Because it got canceled before they could get anything out the door.
If only they had made a Gregory Harrison Logan, I would have taken his costume and put it on Hutch, and I would have been okay.
Well, I own the world's only Gregory Harrison Logan figure.
Oh.
Yeah,
wow.
I got it from a friend of a former Mego employee, my friend Mark Huckabone bought it, and I paid a lot for it.
In the costume?
Yeah, I have.
Nice. Could you share pictures of that? I don't know if I've ever seen it. I'm sure
they're at the Mego Museum. I have Francis. I'll send them to you tomorrow. I have Francis, Logan, and Rem, and I have Jessica's head.
I got the Gregory Harrison. What was the stripper movie he did? One Night in Heaven or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got that action figure.
We all have that.
I got that action figure.
Yeah.
Not a lot of clothing on that one.
I have the rare Gonzo Gates Ben Cooper costume. I think that might be the end of Space 1999 for us.
I think that Gregory Harrison stripping jokes maybe is where we wrap this up.
Well,
the closest I ever got to a stripped down Gregory Harrison was Pulsar.
That's pretty stripped down. That's for sure. Well, there you go, everybody. I hope you learned something about Space 1999. I know I did, and I'm going to pass it along. And hopefully this was fun for everybody. Take your mind off the crazy world right now. And, go to and by the way, the show is streaming on Amazon Prime, Space 1999 right now.
Oh, I was gonna say, are we streaming on Amazon Prime? Because that'd be great.
That would be awesome. But the show is, so anybody can just go if you got a Prime member, and both seasons are up.
It's also free, I want to say, on Tubi TV.
I think Shout Factory.
On Shout Factory too?
Yeah, even though I bought the deluxe Shout Factory Blu-ray, I've been watching it on YouTube a lot. I kind of got bummed at the Shout Factory Blu-ray because they were using clips, and I'm like, those scans look familiar, and I could see half the Plaid Stallions logo.
Oh.
And it was like, if they had asked, I would have sent them anything they wanted because, like, I'm
clips of what?
They were using scans of some toy trade stuff I had, and I've never turned anyone down ever.
Right.
On that level, I would have shared it. But they just like ripped it off my website and didn't ask, and it was like, oh.
Shout Factory?
Yeah, I was so disappointed in that because, like I said, if they had written me and said, "Hey, can we have a scan of this without your logo on it?" I would have come, "Here you go," and I wouldn't have asked for anything. I'm a sharer. It's just when I put it on my site, I kind of want a little recognition for doing stuff for my collection, but. Yeah, it was kind of a bummer because it was the first day of my vacation. The Space 1999 stuff arrived and it was raining, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." I'll spend this day doing this. And the first thing I watch is the merchandising thing, which has John Kenneth Muir, who is an absolute expert on Space 1999. But whoever was doing the production decided to just swipe images from the internet.
No kidding.
Like, oh crap,
Oh, that's a bummer.
Well, I really wasn't that bummed. It was like,
No, it's just not. It's it'd be nice to,
Yeah, it's like I would have provided those happily for you, man. Like it's not a big deal. But
yeah,
I think is UFO streaming too? Isn't UFO on Amazon too?
I think it was.
It's
somewhere.
on Tubi as well.
Is it?
Tubi TV. Yeah.
Tubi TV, by the way, is amazing. They just put every episode of Kamen Rider, the first season, on there with subtitles, and it's almost like they knew I'd be stuck in my house with nothing to do. And I'm so grateful to them. So I can't recommend that enough either.
Oh, very cool. Well, there you go. I'm gonna go read my Dynamite magazine about Space 1999.
I have that one too.
Did it come with a poster?
That one doesn't have a 3D poster, I don't think so. But I have that also as the fridge magnet version of it, sitting on my fridge to bring me happiness every single day whenever I get my milk.
That's
nice.
Amazing.
Well, David, thank you for being available to do this, man. We appreciate it.
And, man, this was a blast.
Yeah.
It was my absolute pleasure, and I know that you guys are a duo, so whenever you choose to include me, it's a real treat, because I'll just go back to the days when I used to listen to you guys before I even knew you, and I used to sit and listen to your podcast and say to myself, oh my God, I wish I was sitting there with them, because I could share my 2 cents as well. So the fact that I actually know you two now, it brings me a lot of joy to be able to participate.
Well, we're glad to know you, sir.
Yeah, man, miracles do happen. Look at that. It all came true. Got to be on the show. That's very.
We're gonna toss you our jerseys now.
Get a prize or something. I don't know.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's very nice to hear. We appreciate that, and we'll definitely do it again, of course.
Of course, yeah. In fact, we may do it sooner than later.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Have some time.
I have free time coming up.
We might want to figure out I don't know, what else do we obsess about? Battle Beyond the Stars.
There's plenty. But the question is, what have you guys not covered? Because that's my
I don't
dilemma.
think anyone remembers. We could just do it over again.
Yeah.
We do one episode a month for 6 years, or I don't know how long we've been doing this. So
I'm pushing that Lou Del Grande episode. Might be
seeing things. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I saw him in something recently, Jason. I wanted to send it to you. He pops up in crap.
We got scanners and seeing things, and then that's it.
I was watching something on television, like I was probably going through Canadian television, so but he popped up in something, and it was late at night, and I thought, no, that this is a crazy human being call. But yeah, I'll have to send it to you.
That's fun. We'll think of some stuff.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, let's do this real soon. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
Talk to you guys soon. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.